For great Pokemon TCG product and prices, check out ccgcastle.com.
Hello Pokemon fans, I'm Professor K for the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and we are back with another Deck Tech Thursday. This week we are going to be profiling a deck that is pretty well hyped in the format right now, and it's done fairly decently so far. I wouldn't say it's a tier 1 deck just yet, but I do think that this is a very good competitive deck regardless, and that deck is Tauros Decidueye GX, both of them of course being GX Pokemon, and it's very dangerous. It can be very dangerous if it sets up especially, and it really forces your opponent to decide what they really want to do against you. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started here in the deck. Now, we have one Pokemon that is going to be the main attacker anyway, and that is going to be Taurus GX. Now, this Pokemon has 3 attacks. Now, Taurus GX has 180 HP. It has 3 attacks. It's got Rage, which does 10 more damage for each damage counter on that Pokemon. Of course, the base damage is 20. It's got Horn Attack for 60, and then its GX attack is absolutely nuts. This attack does 30 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So 30 damage times the number of damage counters. If you have 50 damage on this thing, it's hitting for 180. Anything more than that is just extra damage. It is absolutely crazy, and it hits super hard. And a 180 is kind of a hard number for some decks to hit, so unless you're knocking it out in one shot, you better be prepared for some massive damage in return. So that is going to be one of our options here. This is going to be one of our main attackers, and it's powerful, and it is a definite threat to deal with. We also have our support here as well, which is going to put on the pressure to our opponent to make some attacks, or they're going to start taking some knockouts themselves, and that is going to be the Decidueye line. So, of course, we have 3 copies of Rowlet here first. Tackle and Leafage are the 2 attacks, 60 HP. Nothing really too fancy there with Rowlet, of course. You know, this is a Stage 2 GX deck. Next up here, we've got 3 copies of Dartrix, 80 HP, so you get an extra 20. Sharp Blade Quill for a colorless does 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. You can use it in a pinch, and Leaf Blade will do 50 damage, and if you flip a coin and hit heads, it does 20 more damage. Leaf Blade is not the attack you want to be going for at all. Sometimes you may have to Sharp Blade Quill because you might get a bad start or something, but either way, you got those 2, and our final Pokemon that we want to focus on here of this line is Decidueye GX. We've got 3 copies of that as well, so it's a 3-3-3 line, and this Pokemon is good for 2 reasons. Number 1, its ability, Feather Arrow. Once during your turn before you attack, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. It also has an attack, Razor Leaf for a colorless, double colorless, and a grass energy. Hits for 90, not really that fantastic, but it's still an attack if you need to, and Hollow Hunt GX is the GX attack of this Pokemon, and you can put 3 cards from your discard pile back into your hand. So you can either choose to Mad Bull GX or Hollow Hunt GX, depending on which one is more important to you at the point in time the way you're playing the game. The other thing to note, Decidueye has 240 HP. This thing is a monster wall. So that's another thing too, you can kind of wall out a bit. It's weak to fire, so Volcanion destroys it. But other than that, it's pretty hard to hit for 140. And I think your opponent's going to have some trouble doing so. So that is your Decidueye line and your Tauros line. We also have an alternative attacker here as well. We've got 2 copies of Lugia EX. 170 HP, Arrow Ball is the attack we're going to focus on here. 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to both active Pokemon. So even though you're not hitting for weakness, Arrow Ball can hit pretty hard. And if you've got enough energy built up and you're feather arrowing a couple of times, you can take some knockouts that way. It's not too hard to really get that going. So Lugia EX is a pretty decent fit in this deck. Low energy attacks, and it's a good alternative if you can't play, let's just say, Tauros GX over here because of fighting weakness. I had this played against me when I was playing my Zygarde deck, and it resists fighting. So you can just kind of pick and choose whichever attacker you want to use. My opponent, Michael Canavis, decided to use Lugia EX and Decidueye EX as the attackers against Zygarde. And of course, Zygarde is weak to grass, so Razor Leaf is pretty effective against that. Our final Pokemon here we have is 2 copies of Shaman EX. Setup ability, too good, must be in the deck regardless. Don't really need to explain Shaman anymore. You guys know what Shaman does. It's just a good card to have. All right, so for supporters, we have 4 copies of Professor Sycamore. Discard your hand, draw 7 cards. Pretty standard to have 4 copies of that in there. We also play 3 copies of N. I wouldn't say this is a deck that gets really far ahead in prizes right off the bat. It can, but not usually. So N is a good supporter to have as a little safety net there if you happen to not want to throw away your hand. We've got 2 copies of Lysander. Bringing something up off the bench into the active is definitely good. You can buy some time with it. Not to mention, you can knock out something important at the right time. Also, we have a copy of Professor Kukui as well. Draw 2 cards during this turn. Your Pokemon attacks do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. This can make the difference. I think every deck pretty much needs to run at least 1 copy of Kukui. I would say not even just at least, I would say it needs to run 1 copy. It's just too good. It's a muscle band, plus you draw 2 cards, and sometimes you just need that extra 20 damage to make the knockout. And drawing 2 cards is just a little added bonus. So for items, we've got 4 copies of VS Seeker. Search your discard pile for a supporter card, put it into your hand. Again, standard. Also, we've got 4 copies of Ultra Ball. Also standard as well. Discard 2 cards, search your deck for a Pokemon, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck afterward. Any deck that runs Shaman needs 4 copies of Ultra Ball. That is just a fact. Also, we have 4 copies of Trainer's Mail because, well, looking at the top 4 cards of your deck and finding a trainer card that you want to put in your hand there is always good. Good way to find your supporters, your VS Seekers, your stadiums, everything that's got the word trainer on it. And there are 36 of them in this deck, so that's even more important. Gives you a better opportunity to hit what you want. We have 3 copies of Level Ball because 6 of our Pokemon are less than 90 HP. Our Rowlets, our Dartrixes are searchable by Level Ball, so that is an important thing to have in this deck as well, because we really don't want to be tossing everything to get out our Stage 2 line. 3 copies of Ultra Ball does the job. For tool cards, we've got 3 copies of Fighting Fury Belt because Tauros is a monster, but it's even more of a monster when you've got a Fighting Fury Belt attached to it, turning that 180 HP into 220 and really punishing your opponent for attacking them if they're not knocking it out in one shot, because you're going to turn that 180 HP and let's just say they hit you for 210, for instance. You're going to return back 230 damage with Rage, and, well, let's see here. Can we do the math? 30 damage times 210? 630 damage? Ouch. That's just brutal. With Mad Bull GX, that's a bit overkill, but I don't think anybody's going to really need to hit for 630 damage, but you can do it, though, if you really wanted to. So Rage is probably going to be the move on that one, but it really just, like I said, makes your opponent have to knock it out, and that's really hard to do, you know, without expecting to get knocked out in return, so that's also an alternative you can add to that. So we also have 3 copies of Floatstone because if they bring up your Decidueye, you don't want to have to hard retreat that 2 retreat cost. It's pretty nasty. Floatstone's the way to go on your Decidueye. Also note, Fighting Fairy Belt can be used for Lugia to turn it into 210 and just make your Pokemon have more HP in general. We also have 1 copy of Revitalizer. Sometimes you gotta toss out the grass Pokemon or they get knocked out, discarded, however the case may be. Getting 2 of them out of the discard pile, putting them back into your hand is always good. You can Ultra Ball away like a Dartrix and a Decidueye, and then get a Rowlet, put it down, and then of course you've got your stadium over here, which, I mean, it's pretty obvious for playing Forest Giant Plants. You can get them right back and go Dartrix, Decidueye right afterwards, so that's always good. So we got 1 copy of that for that reason. Grass decks need that 1 copy of Revitalizer for that. We also have 4 copies, like I said, of Forest Giant Plants. Each player's grass Pokemon can evolve his or her first turn that he or she puts those Pokemon into play. So that means we can get a turn 1 Decidueye and start putting on the pressure with Feather Arrow right off the bat, doing that 20 damage, making your opponents start to sweat early in the game, and really make them have to be very careful with their choices. Like I said, Tauros will punish you to no end. All right, our energy lineup here, we have 4 copies of Grass Energy, and we have 4 copies of Double Colorless. It's not a really energy-heavy reliant deck. You only need a Double Colorless to get Tauros going. Realistically, you only need a Double Colorless to get Arrow Ball going. You want to do more. You can also Deep Hurricane as well, 80 damage. If there's a Stadium card in play, it does 70 more damage. So that's 150. If you Feathered Arrowed, you can get 170. If you Feather Arrow twice, that's 190. If you did it 3 times, 210 damage. So the numbers are there to make it work. Low energy cost for everything. Razor Leaf takes a grass and a double colorless. Mainly you want to focus on using Hollow Hunt for this, but if you have to Razor Leaf, you have to Razor Leaf. You got to make the deck work for you in the situation that you're in, but I like it. I think it's fun, and I definitely can see why it would be effective. And I don't know, will we see a lot more Tauros Decidueye? It's hard to say. We're brand new into the meta. Everybody's just testing stuff out. It's hard to say what's going to come out on top, but I think this is a contender. And well, this is my take on it. You guys take the deck, do with it what you will, make it your own. Of course, that's what this is here for, just to give you an idea of how a deck works. And this is the build that I chose to put together, and we'll see how it fares against N next Friday. Not tomorrow, next Friday for Battle Frontier Friday against whatever he decides to build. We'll have to see how we can stand up against that and see if we can take another victory for Battle Frontier Friday. So anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, comment down below, subscribe for more TCG content. And once again, thank you guys for all of your support. Without everything you guys do for us and our sponsors over at ccgcastle.com, which, by the way, you guys can pick up the singles for this deck at very good prices over there. Great bunch of people. I definitely recommend buying anything from them. So definitely go and check them out. And that's going to do it for today, guys. So until next time, I'm Professor K for the Pokemon Evolutionaries. You all take care. Have a great day.